under his roof. When I found the apartment listing online, it looked perfect. A cozy studio in a quiet building, all utilities included, and it was shockingly cheap. I'd just moved to the city for a new job, and the price was too good to pass up. The landlord, Mr. Hayes, was an older man with a slight stoop, and an unsettling smile seemed to linger a little too long. But he handed over the keys with a bony, calloused hand and wished me well. I tried not to let his strange demeanor bother me. At first, everything seemed normal. The building was old, with creaky floors and pipes that groaned at night, but it had character. The only thing that started to gnaw at me was that I'd sometimes hear footsteps outside my door late at night. I figured it was just Mr. Hayes, who lived in the basement apartment. I convinced myself he was just checking on things, even if it was a bit strange to do that in the dead of night. One night, I was tossing and turning when I heard the footsteps again. This time, they stopped right outside my door, and I could hear something, soft, raspy breathing. I held my breath, trying not to make a sound. After a few moments, the footsteps moved away, but the air in my apartment felt thick with unease. The next morning, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. My keychain was on the kitchen counter where I always kept it, but my spare apartment key was missing. I searched everywhere, but it was nowhere to be found. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I must have misplaced it, but a nagging feeling told me otherwise. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a prickling on the back of my neck, a sense that I wasn't alone. I tried to shake it off, but then I heard the faintest creak, as if someone were carefully shifting their weight just outside my door. I froze, straining to hear, every muscle in my body tense. My mind raced, imagining Mr. Hayes standing there in the dark, listening to me breathe. In the morning, I decided to confront him. I went down to the basement and knocked on his door. When he opened it, he looked genuinely surprised. Or maybe he was just a good actor. "Yes?" he asked, his voice soft, but his gaze unwavering. "Mr. Hayes, have you been coming up to my floor at night?" He chuckled, a low, unsettling sound. "Just checking to make sure all my tenants are safe. You never know who might be lurking around, right?" There was something off in his eyes, something that made my stomach twist. I mumbled a thanks and left, hoping that was the end of it. But that night, the footsteps returned, and this time, they didn't just stop outside my door. I heard the faint scrape of a key being inserted into the lock. My heart leapt into my throat as I lay there wide-eyed, clutching the blanket to my chest. The lock clicked and I heard the door slowly creak open. I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. The darkness seemed to press in around me as I heard him enter my apartment, the soft whisper of his steps on the carpet. The faint light from the street lamp outside cast a shadow on my wall, a tall, hunched figure creeping toward my bed. My mind raced, wondering what he planned to do, why he was even there. I thought about calling out, trying to scare him off, but my voice caught in my throat. I closed my eyes, hoping he wouldn't see me. I heard him stop just beside my bed, so close that I could feel his presence looming over me. His breathing was shallow and rasping, each exhale sending shivers down my spine. I stayed still, barely daring to breathe, hoping he'd leave. Then, as suddenly as he'd come, he turned and left, his footsteps retreating back toward the door. I heard the lock click shut behind him. The silence that followed was deafening, but I couldn't bring myself to move until the morning light seeped through the window. The next day, I found a note slipped under my door. It was scrawled in messy handwriting, and my blood ran cold as I read it. "Saw you sleeping so peacefully. Don't worry, I'm always watching." I packed my things that morning and left the apartment, leaving my last month's rent unpaid. I didn't care. I could feel Mr. Hayes watching me from his basement window as I drove away, his eyes following me like a shadow I couldn't shake. To this day, I still feel his gaze whenever I'm alone in my room, wondering if he somehow found me again. And every now and then, I'll hear that soft, raspy breathing outside my door, as if he's still checking to make sure I'm safe.